Hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll get started in just a few minutes here. We're going to wait until the room fills a bit. In the meantime, let us know where you're watching from in the chat. All right. Ooh, excuse my dog. My dog might bark in the background a little bit.
He's a participator.
Oh, there he, yep, he is. All right. Looks like we have a good group here. We'll go ahead and get started. So this is using digital tools to fight burnout in the virtual classroom, and we are here today with the digital arts experience. Just a few guidelines to go over before we begin. Please use the Q&A feature for questions. Please don't use the chat or any hand raising, and we will try to get to every question. This Zoom session will also be recorded, and a YouTube link will be sent out to all attendees afterwards. Thank you so much for joining. Wacom has been used by the world's leading educators, artists, designers, animators, VFX artists, and game developers for over 37 years. Thanks for joining the digital arts experience to learn how Wacom products and free online tools can bring life back to virtual classrooms and work sessions. And we have an exclusive offer for you today, $50 off the Wacom One over at B&H. Just use the code Wacom Webinar, and that should get you that discount. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob to do some introductions and tell you a little bit more about the DAE. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you so much, Shireen, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Rob Kistner. I am the founder and president of the Digital Arts Experience, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a couple minutes. In addition to that, I am an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship and design thinking, as well as the designer in residence at Iona College and Manhattanville College as well. I teach entrepreneurship there. And with us today, I have some very, very excellent members of the DAE team. I've got Lori, who is our creative director. In addition to that, she is an unbelievably talented artist and illustrator. I have Pat, who is an instructor for several years with the Digital Arts Experience and is sort of a jack of all trades and master of all trades, not a jack of all trades, master of none, illustrator, animator, and just overall creative person. And I have Nick, who is the director of operations, who is also a very talented animator, game designer, and D&D wizard extraordinaire. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking about a couple of different things today, but first and foremost, Digital Arts Experience has been in business for about 9 years. And we provide enrichment programs for kids in creative technology. We started off on the more creative side of things with filmmaking and graphic design, photo and video and music production. And over the past several years, we've added computer science and game design, 3D printing and laser cutting, and several other disciplines to our curriculum. And as anybody that's in any form of education knows, when we all sort of got sent home and locked down, it sort of changed the game for us as much as any other educator. And lucky for us, we were pretty quick to adapt because most of what we do is software based and all the software we use is free. And switching to online programming at first was pretty easy and our students were reasonably well engaged. But as we all know, over time, staring at screens all day and the whole Zoom burnout thing really started to catch up. And we had to think a bit outside the box in terms of ways that we could not only keep our students engaged, but keep our team engaged when we met and we were brainstorming new things. So what we hope to talk and share with all of you today is about some of the things that we do both in and out of the classroom to keep our students engaged, as well as each other engaged in continuing to move forward with all the things that we need to get done on a day-to-day basis. So what I'd like to do first is pass the floor over to Pat, and Pat has been working with a group of students in a digital drawing class. So it's like, and he's in the midst of it now. So it's super, super relevant. Pat, why don't you take it away and talk a little bit about what you've done over the past several weeks to engage your students?
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me? Just making sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So as you guys know, as Rob has just mentioned, that I am an instructor for the DAE, and over the past couple of weeks, I've been working with a group in Yonkers to help engage students through digital drawing, where they make comics and they build out their own stories and ideas. And one of the things that they use as part of those are things like the Wacom intros, which I think I have my old one here. I'll find it in a little bit, as well as whatever other kind of tablets they can get their hands on. But we usually rent out like the Wacom intros for that, and they are able to then draw and build their comics in much more engaging ways. And one of the difficult things about digital learning that I found going into COVID last year, as well as how we've been trying to manage this, is that it's really hard for students, both in regular classrooms and in art classrooms, to shift their focus from a physical space to an online space. Tends to be a tough transition. You don't necessarily always have the same tools that you can use in the classroom that you have at home. And one thing that tends to suffer for a lot of kids is their art supplies and things like that might not be as accessible as sometimes a digital drawing can be for students. Now, one of the toughest things for students to get out of their is to get out of their own head when doing any sort of digital art. And so usually we try to actually start with some sort of exercise. And as a point of that, we are actually going to run one of those exercises that we tend to try to run for students for you guys today. And here, I'll share my screen.
Okay, sounds good.
So that I can show that. So let's see, where is the share screen? There it is. And screen 2. All righty. So do you guys see my screen with the people and drawings that we have on here? So we here at the DAE sometimes use Google Jamboard just for meeting notes and things like that. Nick's probably going to touch on that a little bit later. But one thing that we can do using free access, like things like Jamboard, is that we can actually draw together. And I realized my camera just went off. We can actually draw together. And because we can draw together, I'm going to do an exercise with everyone. I'm going to create a new little frame here. And this exercise is what I call the one-line exercise. So you guys have probably done this kind of game in school before, where you start, it's a speaking exercise, but we're going to do it in drawing, where you say one word and another person says another word and then another word, and so on and so forth until you get a sentence. The one-line exercise is very similar in that you draw one line or one continuous drawing, as long as you don't lift your pen, and then the next person after you will then do the next line, and then we all come up with a picture together. It's a fun little way to flex the muscles, get out of your own head, and to play around with just drawing together, and it kind of helps you just engage more. So yeah, I'll start off with a line, and I'm gonna just start off with something fun. So I'll do a head. So there we go. I started off with this. And so we're gonna go to Nick next, I think, because I have
right, Nick.
Here.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was unmuted there. All right.
Yeah.
I'm on a little bit of delay, so your drawing just finished. So what I will say is one line drawing. Okay.
Just, you can't lift your pen. That's the only rule.
All right. I've added a little shape here. Who's going after me?
I think it's my turn.
I think it's Lori.
Okay.
And then we end
Take
with
it away,
Rob.
Lori.
All right, I have an idea.
And with the strongest of us all.
Yeah, right.
No.
I'm the worst artist of the group of us, so of course I'm going to go last. Okay, you're using green, so I'll choose a different color. All right. The different colors are not necessary in this exercise, but it's fun for us to know who's drawing what. All right, so, okay. Well, I'm going to have to stick with what I know, which is we're going to make a nice little top hat here.
Looking a little bit like Harry Potter so far.
Yeah, nice little, let's fill this in. There we go. A very fancy Harry Potter with a top hat.
Exactly.
Indeed.
I think Harry needed to wear more top hats. But that's the kind of exercise that we would start with to really just get students engaged, get them laughing, get them talking. And then generally speaking, one of the other things I tend to do is I tend to do some what I call what I found online. Because one of the things when I first started using tablets and things like that was, how do I get out of my own headspace and how do I draw clean lines, or how do I draw more confident lines? And so one of the things that I found were some drawing exercises. Let me just get a new, there we go. Ignore the drawings. Let me do one new, there we go. So one of the things I found was some drawing exercises. And what these drawing exercises are just like simple drawing exercises where you play around with the pen weight, where you play around with trying to draw straight lines just right next to each other and while alternating pen weight. And this might seem fairly basic stuff, and it is very basic stuff. But like how when you start off exercising and doing things like heavy exercising, you might start off with stretches. Starting off with things like this can help bring your brain back to a very simple way to express yourself. And it also serves another purpose. One thing we think we strive for at the DAE is not just creating art or coding and things like that. We try to also help students express themselves. And one of the things that art can help with, and tablets can help with, and things like that, is help learn how to be more confident in yourself. One great thing about digital art that you do not get in any other kind of art is the undo button. Just the ability to go back and hit undo right away. A lot of times students struggle with not wanting to say something that's wrong, not wanting to be incorrect about anything, or in the case of art, not wanting to draw a line that doesn't look good. But because of how digital art works, because of the fact that not all tablets have screens, again, we try to use, again, there are tablets that do have screens, but sometimes kids have to use tablets that don't have screens. Or even when they do have screens, your hand is shaky, you're not used to the surface, things can take a little bit more time to get used to. By doing these kinds of exercises and just going in and doing these quickly, you're building not only confidence in doing those kind of lines, but also that willingness to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and be able to build further from there. And by doing that, you're going to show students that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. And that's something that's really difficult, because especially in a time so uncertain like now, where COVID and things like that, that's really tough on kids. That's really a hard thing for kids to be struggling with, where the world became a lot more fragile overnight pretty much. And so how are you willing to take risks, or how are you willing to put yourself out there when out there is so scary? Having tablets, having things that can help you just draw or learning how to do art in those kind of ways can really help expand those horizons for kids and teach them that, hey, you're not going to be great at this right away, but over time, as you do it, you're just going to eventually be able to get that straight line. And that's okay. It might take time. You might not always do it every time, but that's going to be okay. And that's kind of what I've found in a lot of the digital art.
Pat, if I could just interject for a second, we're talking about using things like Jamboard or the Bamboo Paper app and running these exercises with kids, but teaching undergrads and graduate students, I found these exercises to be just as important. In fact, one of the things I do right at the beginning of first class of a new design thinking class, whether it's online or in person, is we do what's called the hybrid utensil design challenge, where everybody lists out their favorite foods and we pair 3 of them together, and they have to design the perfect utensil to eat all 3 of those foods. That's literally the first thing we do. And we go into a Jamboard just like we did before, and they have to sketch them and present them. And it's such a out of the box abstract project where the quality of the drawings doesn't matter, how realistic the utensil doesn't matter. And it sets the tone that 1, it's okay to take risks. 2, it's okay to be creative. And 3, it's okay to make mistakes. So regardless of the age of the students, whether they're art students or not, these kinds of tricks, tools, and techniques really set a great tone to allow students to, be more confident, take more risks, and understand that it's okay to get things wrong.
Even I've done digital art for years. Like these kind of exercises, these kind of things, this kind of technology and ability to use these things even helped me come like in this year calm down and be like, when everything was closing down, like I didn't have the access to my art supplies that I usually would have and things like that. So it helped me kind of focus my own self and be able to like come back and learn and figure out things in a year that really you kind of needed it. And so this is good for literally all ages in a lot of ways. And I just have found that students have really, it might take them a second, but I found that like whenever I teach a student, as soon as they start to learn about those things, it takes them a little while to get used to it. But once they start getting used to it, I just see them really just begin to pick up and move. And that's what's really important. Once they see that their art is coming, once they see that they're actually beginning to succeed, even after every failure, like as soon as they get that first success, it's a switch that turns on and they keep going.
I have
Absolutely.
a question for you guys. Is this an exercise that you might use for somebody that's like a new tablet user, somebody who's never used like an Intuos, for example?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I tend to there's a couple of videos online that I've found that really like have a lot of exercises like these. This is just one that I tend to get drawn to myself. This one and also like S curves and flower petals are all really good just starting off, because a lot of times, especially again with ones that you don't have screens, one of the hardest things to get is that disconnect of where your hand is versus where on the screen it is. And even with a screen, there's always going to be a slight delay, a slight difference between how the screen feels, what's different there. So being able to do these exercises can help teach your brain and kind of build into you some really core sets of like, this is how I use it, and learn to get out of your own head in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's low risk, right? We're not trying to make a masterpiece here. We're just writing squiggles. So like, if you make a couple of bad ones, that's fine. You can undo them. It's not like you're jumping into trying to draw a self-portrait or make some, fantastic anime character. It sets the tone that, you can experiment a little bit and get comfortable with it without the pressure of trying to jump right into drawing something significant. So I think unless anybody has any questions, we can segue a little bit and talk a little bit about how exercises like this not only work with students, but work with effective communication and, fun and creativity within a team. I mean, one thing I'll say is I'm extremely lucky that I work with such a creative group of people. And from the beginning of the pandemic, when, things were pretty bleak. I mean, we spent 8 years running an in-person tech program, and then all of a sudden we weren't allowed to run in-person tech programs anymore. So it was pretty defeating. But one of the things we did at the DAE is, we met every day even if for only a couple of minutes via Google Meet, and used a lot of Jamboards. And, one of the things that we made sure to do is keep things fun, light, and creative. And so we're going to pass the floor over to Nick, and Nick can share some of the things that we've worked on and ways that we've kept really solid, fun collaboration and communication as a team using the Wacom tablets and the Google Jamboard.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Nick. Generally, I'm the person running around like a chicken with its head cut off, just trying to make sure everything is in place. So I'm usually just running around everywhere. As Rob mentioned, during the pandemic, things were kind of a little bit different. So we started relying on Google Jamboards to just kind of plan things out a little bit. So I actually have a couple of prior Jamboards that we're going to take a quick look at. I'm not going to go too crazy into them because admittedly they are logistically based. So I understand they're kind of boring to look at. So we're just going to kind of peruse through them a little bit, but then we'll have a little bit of fun near the end because we also use Jamboards for a couple of our clubs and other social aspects. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, I believe everyone can see my screen. Just give me a thumbs up if we're good on that end. All right,
Looking
awesome.
good.
Thank you, guys. So this is actually, we have an open house coming up, which you should totally go to, by the way, if you're in the area. But basically, one of the things we have to do, since we're not actually in the space, is we have to figure out where everything is going to go. So we create little map layouts. Like we've got some shape tools in here that we use. We also started implementing more color coding systems to tell where everything is, rather than saying, yeah, that spot over yonder, that's like 2 feet from the left and northwest corner. No, none of that. So this is just a nice, easier way to start planning things out. See if I have anything else of note in this slide. And then we're like just planning out table stuff. And these are squiggles. They're not super crazy. They're just basic shapes. Like I've got like a little cones here, little like points of entry, stuff like that. I think it just kind of goes from there. And that's me just kind of planning the route out. And I use this on various levels, sometimes a little too much, but again, with more squiggles, this looks like a hunk of nonsense. But essentially, this is me trying to figure out, okay, when the pandemic was just starting, we were really concerned about foot traffic. So me and the team would be in this and we would say, okay, do we want to let me actually open up a new one. We're going to go to the very end over here. So if we're ever like in a Jamboard, we'll like just quickly like lay out the space. We'll quickly just put out like where the entrances are. Okay, do we want people to come in this way, come around and go out? And then like, what's the general like movement or situation we want to create with that sort of scenario? So having everyone being able to collaborate and share their ideas, not just verbally, but also just literally showing us, what they mean, is something that's very important. So there are several iterations of this. Again, I'm not going to bore you going through all of it because logistics is boring. So we're going to go over to something a little bit more detailed. This is something that I was working on where we were sort of planning out how to like put our technology. So for me personally, because I'm a very visual person, it helps to actually like draw out the table, see where the computers are, and then like start taking it a step further about like the distances and all that stuff. You see, I actually color coded everything so I can see where the numbers are being generated from, that kind of stuff. And then like, even like, how do we hook up power? So I really appreciate just like being able to like get different bits of color. You can get highlighters, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I would not be able, oh, of course, there's a truck going by my window. Pause for a moment. Yes, thank you.
The truck's just saying hi.
Yes, indeed. So just the sheer ability to be able to use a stylus to do this is, I would not wish my worst enemy to use a mouse and do drawing. All right. It is a huge pain in the butt. Having a Wacom tablet makes this so much better. And it just really frees up your creativity. So again, more stuff, just coming up with ideas about how power works. I've got the power lines, power strips under there, all that kind of good stuff. Let me see if there's anything else of note. I think this is mostly just logistical stuff here. And then we've got more outlines.
And if I can jump in for a sec, Nick, just,
yes.
Because Nick and I are constantly working together on logistical things. So what's great is we on our own may make a couple of sketches of ideas that we might have, and then we'll come together in a Google Meet and open up the Google Jamboard. And what's amazing about this is there's really nothing lost in translation. I mean, we can in real time share these ideas and like, when Nick references a certain part of the facility or a certain outlet or a certain computer, I know exactly what he's talking about because we're literally sketching it out together in real time. It's not like he's describing it to me and I'm sort of trying to rely on my own mental imagery of the space to make that happen. So outside of this being really fun and visual, it also makes communication amongst the team so much more efficient and clear because we're looking at the same thing, we're working on the same thing, we're working together on it. And it's been absolutely integral to us moving forward through working remotely.
And just to kind of build off of that, like we were actually playing around with, yes, honk, hello. This is what happens when you live on the first floor. But regardless, like at some point, just as a quick example, like we were trying to come up with ideas for barriers. So one of the cool things about being able to use a Jamboard with this, like, okay, could we maybe do a 3-tiered thing? We were also like, all right, do we want to like just do a partition that's in the middle? Should we use like brackets to secure them? Do we want to use like Velcro sections? So just, even again, these are just squiggles, but just getting the ideas out is very important. And that's something that we use on a regular basis. Now, I know I've bored you with the logistics because everyone is bored by logistics, even the logistics guys. So I'm going to skip over to another section really quickly, and we're going to talk about D&D for just 2 seconds. So one of the clubs that we manage is the D&D club, and usually it's a very social thing to get people down at a table together, roll dice, and then, work on this interactive story. So it's good Lord. So with Google Jamboard, one of the cool things is that I can actually just draw the maps right out, and having the Wacom tablet makes it a lot easier to do this. So this was actually a section where I actually based a boss off of Krang from the Ninja Turtles. So I had like this like big sort of spidery thing in the spaceship. We were doing like D&D in space. And this is like a cafeteria. So I can even just like grab the shapes, move them around. And then if, say, for instance, someone, cast fireball, and it's like, oh, everything's on fire. Oh no, everything's burning down. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I can put in elemental things. I can say, okay, I'm still on the paintbrush here. Let's switch back to pen. So I can say, nope, a barrier is now falling over here. You have to go around. You can move shapes and stuff. And it's a very, very intuitive and nice tool. And again, having the ability to use a stylus with this is, I can't even begin to tell you how helpful that is. And that's kind of the end of my spiel right there. Just giving you an idea how we used the creativity for logistics purposes and club stuff. But I want to kind of piggyback off of that idea, and I'm gonna send things over to my coworker Lori, because we also use this to generate ideas in terms of marketing and various bits of advertisement. So Rob, maybe I'll shift it back.
I have
to
one
you
quick
and see
question.
yes.
I just have one question about this D&D map. So switching to D&D online prior to incorporating something like a Jamboard and being able to write things out, have you noticed a change in the engagement of the kids in the sessions?
Yeah, 100%. Because usually what happens is, a dungeon master can, do things in the theater of the mind, which is imagination, but just having the ability to, okay, I'm here, person's over here, and like being able to see visually like where things are going. And I know like Patrick is actually one of our dungeon masters, and he will occasionally like draw and show things out. So like, oh, you're being attacked by a thing that looks like, this, and it's like either a goblin or a troll or, what have you. So it just helps to like fuel the imagination a lot more as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Nick.
Absolutely.
All right.
Stop my sharing.
Lori, the floor is yours. Now, Lori is a extremely creative person. She's in anything that looks good that comes out of the DAE is made by Lori. And we're constantly collaborating on our messaging and how we're going to be reinforcing that with the photos and the logos. And part of what we tried to figure out during the pandemic was other ways we can engage kids, because kids were put off by online classes. The word online and class together started to become a bad word, right? And anytime students that, oh, we lost Lori. Oh, well, I'm sure she'll join back momentarily. But after a certain amount of time, online classes became a negative thing, right? And so when online and class were put together, kids were so burned out because of online schooling that any extracurricular programs that were online, unless it was Dungeons and Dragons, they didn't want to have anything to do with. So we really took advantage of the fact that we had a little bit of free time, and we had these tools to start to reimagine our programming and the way that we talk about them and the way we visualize them to better align with what the kids needed, which was meaningful interaction between them and their peers on common interests. So I'm going to actually just pull up the Jamboard really quick, because Lori had that up and it seems that we may have lost her. So bear with me for just a sec while we pull that up. Nick, do you by any chance have the Jamboard?
I do. I can
Lori's here. All right.
Oh, there we
no
go.
Worries. Perfect. All right. Good timing. Hi, Lori.
Hey, oh my gosh, what a dramatic entrance. That would happen to me. I'll just be honest. All right, I was
it's okay.
panicking.
We love a dramatic entrance.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it said like internet connection unstable. I was like, no. All right, so Rob, I totally missed the last minute of what you said.
All I said was that we were sort of thinking about reinventing ourselves in different ways throughout the pandemic to better align with the kids' interests and what they really needed, which was meaningful human interactions, and how we used the time that we had, given the fact that we weren't opened and only running online classes, to kind of reimagine ourselves, and how we've used the Jamboard and the Wacom tablets as an integral tool in being creative and working together to meet those needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So me and another coworker, Emily, we really focus on the parent experience. And, with COVID and everything that happened last year, primarily for the past 7 or so years, we've always been in-person STEAM classes. And, with everything going on, we're like, okay, we need to kind of reinvent some of our classes and do a little bit more with not that the classes weren't interactive, but have kids really talk to each other face to face and discuss things that they love. Because a lot of kids that come in here, they love Minecraft, they love Roblox, they love coding, they love games like everyone does. So, they want to make the game. So we really wanted to add 2 new things to our kind of services If you will, let me share my screen here. So this is a Jamboard that we use to kind of brainstorm what our main services are and what we offer the kids that come here. So as you see to the right here, we have our classes. I'm just gonna pull up a little highlighter thing here. So here we have like the classes, you know, deep exploration, academic, no homework, create a body of work. And we thought, you know, let's add some clubs because we already had the Dungeons and Dragons club running. So we're like, okay, well, we can do like a YouTube club. We can do, I think it was like the Game Enthusiasts Club where they can make games in Roblox Studio, you know, stuff like that. So those are a little bit more laid back, fun, exploring, you know, new ideas and talking with other kids. And then we have the quests, which is kind of similar to these like day workshops we used to run during like school holidays. So the kids had one day, they couldn't, you know, maybe commit to like a 6-week class, but just like they could come in for a day. So those are kind of based off of that, the quests are. And so we were like, okay, it's like a journey, right? So maybe we give them a prompt and they have to figure out a way to get to the end result and kind of like complete this mission or so, you know, something like that. So that's kind of like the overview. And, you know, we put them in these 3 sections. And then my job was to kind of think about how to present this to the parents to make them want to enroll their kids. They already know about our classes, they know and love them, but we're adding these 2 new things. So we were really trying to brainstorm how to present those new ideas in a visual way. So what did we do? We started to draw together. This is the first round of sketches that I think Rob actually drew. So for the clubs here on the left, you have like 3 people here and they're all kind of like going up and they're like thinking about different things. And so that kind of represents the clubs, like the YouTube club, the Game Enthusiasts Club, the Dungeons and Dragons Club. And then in the middle are the quests. So we're like, oh, okay, let's have this mountain and people looking up and like seeing this light bulb, like, oh, I want to get there. You know, how can I use the computer, a drawing tablet, these tools to get to that end result. So sometimes with like a game quest, we would have a random prompt generator. So it's like, okay, you have to make a game where like you're a wizard and you got to go save the princess, but there's like evil cats in the way or something like that. I don't know. So that's kind of like what the quests were about. And then the classes are exactly what you might think. They're curriculum based. You kind of go into it not really knowing much, but by the end you have a really awesome coded game or piece of artwork or graphic design. So this is kind of where the start of all that was. And, you know, it's really cool because, you know, Rob, you were saying like, you're not a great artist, but like, that doesn't matter. You know, I think being creative is not, you know, you being able to draw, it's what's in like your mind and just being able to have that come down to your arm and your pen and being able to kind of put that on paper or a screen. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And then we had an iteration of this. So we kind of started to think about it a little bit more. We're like, okay, we like the people. Let's all have them like thinking about the same thing, right? So instead of having different kids thinking about different clubs, they're all talking to each other and thinking about the same thing. Then the second one, I love this drawing, but we were thinking about like rock climbing because Rob he loves rock climbing and hiking and all that. So we're like, okay, if one person's down at the bottom and they're trying to help the other person up, you know, the kids are kind of helping each other get to that end result. That was kind of the idea for the quest. And
I think that was supposed to be a map that the person on the bottom is holding with the X marks the spot, right?
Yeah, that was a map. We're like, oh, okay, but we got to think about like, you know, kind of this path that they might take. So, you know, there's a couple different ideas here, and I will show you what we came up with at the end. And then for the classes, I did like a preliminary design, and it was just one computer. But then I think Nick chimed in and was like, oh, but you know, it should be more than one computer because the kids, you know, they're in a class together. It's not a private lesson. They're together in a class and learning together. How many times can I say the word together? I don't know. The next slide. This is the final result. So I got to drawing, and this was the clubs, the quests, and the classes. And you can kind of see how all of our ideas, really like melted into this one or three cohesive designs. And I think this session was like one of our best, because we all discussed together, we're all part of a team. And, all of this kind of began when, COVID happened, and we were just in meetings every day, just trying to see each other face to face. We couldn't see each other in person, and we would just like doodle, and, it kind of loosened us up for this really awesome final result, which I think was really effective. And then this was how it looked on the website. So yeah, so that is the design aspect, and kind of like how we use sketching to come up with these really cool logos and little spot illustrations for our parents to kind of see what we have to offer. And yeah, and if there's one takeaway, I would say that you're all creative. Everyone can be creative. You don't have to be good at art to be creative. It really is about the ideas and what you come up with.
And I think what's significant here is, we've used this obviously to develop an idea to market new versions of our classes, but it doesn't need to be about that. I mean, this could be several kids together on a Jamboard that are all remote, working on developing a story together, right? Maybe everyone draws out what they want the character to look like. Maybe they, sketch out on the Jamboard together, what the setting is going to look like. We've used Jamboards remotely with students when we were developing games, and we list out lots of ideas of, what style game, where's it going to take place, who's going to be the enemy, how many levels, all that kind of stuff. It's just a place to come together and be collaborative, where we can all see what we're working on. And that it's such a difference than just talking about it. I mean, the fact that, the DAE team could all jump in one Jamboard and just scribble down ideas. And we didn't show you all the pages. There were lots of pages of like ridiculous doodles and like, all kinds of different ideas. And again, it's about setting the tone, right? It's letting we know each other and we've worked with each other for years and years, but when we're talking about something serious, it's important to loosen up a little bit and know that it's okay to throw out bad ideas, right? And so by jumping in the Jamboard and throwing some doodles together, that sets the precedence that this is a safe place for us to be creative and share these ideas. And I think that's really important with students, regardless what you're teaching them or regardless what they're working on. It's important to establish, especially online, but even in person, the tone that it's a place to share ideas, creative ideas safely. And I think the Jamboard is an awesome tool with that. And if it's okay with you, Lori, I'm just gonna take over screen sharing for a sec here. And I wanna just show a couple of examples of how I've used the Jamboard as well as the bamboo paper for several projects. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Rob, I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you're like, no worries. If you're like a graphic designer or anything like that, I've done some logos outside of the DAE. Really there's no bad sketch. It's so true, because when you're going through the process of like designing a logo or something like this, like a little spot illustration, it's really good to get those like ridiculous ideas out and be like, okay, that could never work, or like, oh, that one's bad, but like I had to get it out of my system, kind of thing, and that really helps to refine all your sketches. And I think it's really integral in
Yeah,
the design process. I was like, what? In the design process, and I think that's super important.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And related to the design process, we do a lot of 3D printing, and we teach a lot of students, not just like basic stuff with Tinkercad, but we get into some CAD design. And I've got a couple of private lessons I'm working on. I don't know if you can see my screen here. Here's just my Jamboard home. But when I work with students and we're working in Fusion 360 doing some CAD design, I'm working with some students who are super interested in moving parts, different types of joints, different types of changes in motion. And First thing we'll do when we're coming up with an idea is we jump in and start sketching. So I just did this May 10th, just a few days ago. I was teaching a student how to make a simple lever with a joint in the bottom, and we had to sort of explore how we wanted it to work and how we wanted it to look. So the first thing we did is we jumped into Jamboard and just started sketching out ideas. And then we jump over to Fusion and start making that happen, right? So that's one example. Another example is we were exploring the way a lock works with the different pins. And so we jumped into Jamboard and we started sketching out the structure of a lock and sort of like thinking about, okay, there's different pins with springs, and when they move to certain points, they align properly, and that's how the key is able to unlock it. We didn't end up actually making this project. It was far too complicated, but we jumped into Jamboard and dissected it. Another student I was working with was interested in making a rack and pinion steering mechanism and understanding how that would work in a car. I don't know if I have the Jamboard handy. I'm sure I do. At any rate, we jumped in and we started sketching different options. So this as a collaborative tool, I could not teach without. And not just with things like CAD design or graphic design. In some of my higher ed classes, I'll show you one. I did a session with the occupational therapy department at Iona College. And essentially the goal was, and this was in person, by the way, this wasn't remote, but the goal was to get the students, these were graduate students, to understand that they were occupational therapists that were working in schools with kids. So they were developing programs for different exercises and things for the kids to do. But what the professor wanted them to realize is that occupational therapy is not just the work that's done with the kids, it's also a service, meaning that you need to understand the needs of the classroom teacher and what you're adding to their workload, what you need the administration to understand, what you need the parents to understand. So we came in and we applied some design thinking concepts and started putting together a lo-fi prototype of occupational therapy as a service. So we jumped into this group and we basically started breaking down how a given school year would work in different phases. We said phase one is going to be, okay, the first thing we do is we go into the classroom and we observe, and we wrote down all the things that we need to do just with these little Post-its, right? We were doing this all collaboratively, but again, using the Jamboard as a visual tool to be able to organize these Post-its around was great. So we put the phase one program in there, and phase two is defining the class goals and understanding, the needs of the teachers and the needs of the administration and the needs of the kids, and finding a program that's going to fit all of that. The third was collaboration feedback, right? A collaboration and user feedback. So bringing this idea to the teachers and saying, like, what do you like? What do you not like? How can we adjust this to not give you more work, but also meet the needs of the students, and so on and so forth. And we basically put together a lo-fi prototype of what occupational therapy as a service is. And then the students went off and elaborated on that and that sort of thing. And the same thing goes for, my undergrad students. If we're brainstorming, user needs, we'll do these empathy maps, right? We'll do it with the Jamboard, right? And sometimes we use the Post-its, and sometimes we'll do it hand-drawn with the Jamboard. But regardless, the tool lets us all work together to share these ideas. So this was feedback about some TikTok video campaign that a student had put together. But at any rate, these collaborative tools make all of the difference in working together, not just remotely, but in person as well. It really enables much more effective collaboration and communication. So anybody have any final notes before we take some questions from the group here? Pat, anything to add? Nick, anything to add? Lori, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, we do so many different kinds of classes, digital drawing being one of them, and like 3D printing. And whenever the students come in, they're always like really interested in like the 3D printers. But the same is with like the Wacom tablets. Like they see them and I'm like, oh, that's something like they feel like they can start drawing just right away. They can't just they're not just sitting down in the computer and like with a blank Google Doc or something like that. But because I think drawing is so innate in you, when they see the Wacom tablets, they immediately get interested in it. And that really helps in their classes as well.
The one note I wanted to add, I meant to mention this before, Pat, when you were talking about accessibility with the art supplies, how digital drawing enables accessibility. One thing that I think is so amazing is the One by Wacom tablet, which is different than the Wacom One. The One by Wacom is a super low cost tablet that requires no drivers. So it works with Chromebooks, right? And so, most schools these days are providing Chromebooks for their students. And at one point that might have meant there was, lack of accessibility to certain programs or certain capabilities, but not anymore with things like Pascal, which is a pixel art program, or a Sprite Designer, with things like Gravit, and several other web-based programs. The One by Wacom, you can just plug right into the Chromebook and you've got a drawing tablet. And I think it's $39.99 or something in that ballpark. Oh yeah, photop.com as well. Thank you, Selena. That's another great one. It's like a Photoshop alternative that runs web-based, and you can use the One by Wacom with a Chromebook. So when we talk about accessibility, at one point it might have been you needed some souped up Mac or some, home built PC and then a several $100 drawing tablet, but not anymore. I mean, the accessibility to these tools has really come a long way. So Pat, I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was about to say something very similar to that with the accessibility and such, as well as again, I mentioned this in the chat as well, but I'll mention it here just so that people can hear it too. But I have ADHD, and so being able to work with my hands and draw things using computer or using the Wacom tablets and such really does actually help me concentrate and keep myself focused on things. And that's really tough, again, during things where you're stuck inside all the time on the computer. It's really hard to not get distracted all the time. And so anything that kind of helps focus me down and help me can really, I'm obviously not the only person with ADHD. There's going to be students with ADHD. There's going to be students who have issues with being able to sit still and focus, and that's completely fine. So I think that technology like this and those honest discussions about and on top of everything, learning disabilities and other things such as again ADHD, dyslexia, things like that. This is stuff that can really help students learn beyond just the art aspects that I know we touch on most of the time because we're artists, but even just with note taking or things like that, those can be really helpful because a lot of students need that kind of prehensileness with their hands to be able to draw and write and things like that. Absolutely. Anybody have any?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to pop in here with some questions in the Q&A. Selena asked, are there any other note-taking skills that you teach or use in classes? And I see Nick responded here. Nick, if you want to just say that out loud for the rest of the audience.
Yeah, sure. So just to repeat the question, again, as mentioned, was more about what other note-taking skills we encourage. And one that I always suggest is taking screenshots. So you can hit a couple of shortcut keys, and then once you have a picture out of that, you can then take notes on top of that. So if there's a very specific set of sirens that are going outside your window, lucky day today, apparently. Hold on, I'm gonna just let this pass real quick.
No worries. I'm surprised my dog hasn't been barking throughout this. So.
But I'll jump in for a second. Oh no, Nick's good. I'll let him take it away. Take it away.
So it's just another feature because when you get to teach students another aspect of the computer they didn't really know about, possibly, and then further integrating that with drawing on top of it. So they can either, write out text notes or they can actually draw, what is intended. So it's again, coming back to that visual sort of oh, okay, I'm starting to understand this now.
I've actually, just to piggyback off that for a second, I've seen some students do some really creative things with the drawing tablets and being able to screenshot, where they'll take a screenshot and then mark it up in a certain way and then take another screenshot and then mark it up in another way. And it's almost like they're capable of layering in Photoshop, but just doing compounded screenshots, adding different layers of drawing. It's really cool to see how students have been able to take advantage of that in really creative ways to create some interesting visual art.
And I see, awesome. Oh, sorry. I saw that we had another question pop up in the Q&A.
Yeah, go for it.
So Selena was asking, how do you handle parents who are unsure, not as savvy with tech tools? So that's a really good question.
Yep.
I would say the first thing right off the bat is anytime you're learning something new, whether it's, managing a spreadsheet or, just learning how certain things work, is to start small. So whether that is just understanding, how the inputs work on the computer, how to like work with certain menus, what are the common themes in a computer. This is something that also relates to game design, is making sure that people understand the language of what you're talking about. Like if I say shortcut keys, that may mean something completely different to other people. So I think it's really important to make sure that everyone understands the general vocabulary. So we usually start there and then we sort of branch out.
And in addition to that, there are, no, that's great, Selena, that you asked a lot of questions. I love it. The other thing with that is, there are super simple programs, there are super complex programs, right? So, a great way to start if you're, talking to a parent who's maybe not super tech savvy is something like the one by Wacom where it's plug and play. There's no drivers to install, you just plug it in and it works. To go along with that, I'm a really big fan of Bamboo Paper, which you can download from the Windows Store. You can download it as a smartphone app. There's just nothing to it. It's a little book that opens up and then you can draw on it, right? You can change the style of paper. So, I think setting the right expectations with the parents about what it is they're going to need to be responsible for really helps, in addition to having some common vocabulary, right? You're not going to want to set up, a parent that's not super tech savvy with the most expensive Cintiq and Photoshop, and all that, and just expect them to run with it. That's just not realistic. So I think it's understanding that there's a good spectrum of tools that are ultra simple or ultra complex, and really picking the right one to recommend.
Great. Selena has another question. Earlier on, she asked, how do you adapt to new technologies and trends in video games? And I guess this could go for all of your courses. How do you adapt to those new technologies?
So that's always really challenging. And for us, it's always about trying to shift the energy about Fortnite, about Roblox, about Minecraft to something creative, right? And so I feel like as a whole, we've done a pretty good job with that. But it's so to provide some examples, when we were first opening up, we opened in 2012. That was every kid in the world saw Minecraft and they started to lose it, right? And jump up and down and all that good stuff. And so anytime we said the word Minecraft, the students immediately assumed they'd just be sitting around playing Minecraft. We can't just do that, right? We want kids to learn and be creative. So we've adapted it in a few ways. One is we took the theme of Minecraft and applied it to something else, where we came up with the Animate 3D Models in Minecraft class, which is actually a 3D animation class, but we're teaching the students how to model Minecraft characters. And they get to go online and choose their skins and texture their characters with it. So it's redirecting some of that energy. We've also done the Minecraft City Builders, Minecraft Space Builders, and Redstone Engineer classes where the students are in Minecraft. But as a group, we need to learn a little bit about urban planning and design the best city possible, or learn a little bit about a lunar habitat and then design the lunar habitat that's going to meet all of those needs. And Redstone on its own is amazing because it's kind of like electrical engineering and computer programming built into Minecraft. But again, it's redirecting some of that energy towards creative things. Roblox, it's the same thing. We've got Roblox Studio. So instead of having the kids go crazy wanting to play games, we understand what they love about those games and then start to learn how to make them, right? So I think that redirection is really the key to take what they're obsessed with and passionate about and sort of redirect that towards something more creative and something more educational.
Awesome.
Also with our
Nick,
YouTube class.
Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lori.
Oh no, I was just going to say we have a become a YouTuber class, and if the students want to make their channel about Roblox or Minecraft, we usually require that they play the game at home and record it there and then bring it to class and do something with it rather than just playing the game here and recording it, because sometimes they try to get away with it. Or if they're making like a thumbnail for their video, they can draw something or use something like Canva, which is like a free graphic design tool, to design their own thumbnail, YouTube channel banner, so that's another example of how we kind of redirect that energy.
Very nice. I see Nick responded to this question actually, and I wanted to give him a chance to add his thoughts there.
Yeah, I would say that for like anytime you are see what a student is interested in, we always try to adapt that to something that is interesting. So like in terms of like adapting new technology, the first thing that I would usually do is like first make sure that whatever it is that we're looking at, like how valuable is that to the student at this point? Because like I mentioned before, with like all this incoming information, making sure that we're not overburdening them with information. If there's anything that will stop someone from being creative, it is, thinking that the thing that they're trying to do is too large, which is one reason I really like Patrick's exercises, why we try to do small things once and build them up, and then try to relate something that the student knows. So like Lori mentioned YouTube, Rob mentioned Minecraft. So we look at anything that's coming out, and then we look at, okay, is this going to be good to help focus a student? Is this going to help them get along that path they're looking at? And then we try to incorporate class ideas along with it. I realize that was kind of a broad overview, but that's just the general approach that we take.
Perfect. That was all the questions from the Q&A. Are there any last thoughts that you guys want to add?
I would just double and triple down on what we talked about is use these tools to let the kids be creative, because it sets the tone that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to share ideas. It's really effective to let them play a little bit. Play is important. And with all of our brainstorming sessions, there are plenty of pages of scribbles and play and silly doodles and diagrams. Play is important. It's important to set the tone that it's okay to have fun. Fun facilitates creativity, and creativity facilitates creating great things. So, don't what am I trying to say? Don't get in the way of creativity. Let it happen with something like Jamboard and the one by Wacom. Let them run with it a little bit. So. Share early, share often, and share openly. I love that. That's beautifully said, Pat.
Very nice. I know you guys mentioned that you have an open house coming up. Is there anything else you want to promote, or if you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Sure, absolutely. So our open house it's an in-person open house. It will be on Tuesday of next week from 5 to 7. Obviously, that's only relevant if you're local to Westchester. For anybody that isn't, we are running online programs this summer, and quite a few of them. In everything from 3D Minecraft animation to how to start a YouTube channel. So if you're not in the area and you're interested in learning more about our programs, definitely check out our website. There's actually a Calendly link on our website that I'll throw it in the chat in a minute as well. But there's a Calendly link where you can book a 15-minute consultation for free and kind of talk about our programs and what might be the best fit for your child. I've had teachers book consultations to pick our brain a little bit about some things that we do to better engage the kids in class. We're here to be a resource for all of you, and definitely don't hesitate to get in touch. So I'm just going to pull up that Calendly link and I'll drop it in the chat if anybody else has anything to add.
Specifically, our open house is going to be this coming Tuesday. Lori, what's the date on that one?
I believe it's the 25th.
Awesome. So it's 25th. I believe we open up at 5 p.m. So if you're in the area, definitely swing by. We're going to have a bunch of different activities set up, so you'll get an idea of what summer might feel like in terms of the space. We're also going to have some fun stuff outside. We're going to have some games and little activities between sessions. So it's not all working on getting the perfect program together. No, it'll be a fun time. Swing by and get a sense of what we're all about.
Awesome. I just popped that Calendly link in the chat there. Book a 15-minute consultation about anything you want. Time is yours. Whether you want to talk about Minecraft stuff or you want to talk about the best class for your kid, the time is yours. So
perfect. I also went ahead and dropped the DAE's Instagram link in the chat, so please go ahead and give them a follow. Thank you guys so much for being here. This was awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you to Nick, Pat, and Lori for your insight and ideas.
Yes.
Thank you, Rob.
And thank you to our audience for joining, and we will see everybody in our next webinar. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Hope to see you soon, Selena.
Bye, Selena. Thanks for joining.
Have a good day, guys. Thanks for the questions.